Welcome back to the Modern Hippie Podcast. I am joined today by Tyler Lyle, who is the lead singer and songwriter of The Midnight and an incredible musician and artist throughout time. I know you actually were in the country music scene before you switched over into synthwave, and you still do a lot of musical creations across genres, to my knowledge. So thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, you and I met, interestingly, at one of your VIP acoustic sets before your actual performance in Austin back in September.
In Austin, that's right. Moody. That was a
Yeah.
that was a that was a good day. It's funny. I'd forgotten that I was in Austin this year. um, yes, that's right.
Yeah, well, so one of my best friends and I, the day he and I met, um, he I had been listening to a synthwave song, and I knew that I liked it, and he was like, "Have you ever heard The Midnight?" And he started playing The Midnight, and so The Midnight became a foundation of our friendship, of music that we always listened to together. And so not this past year, but the year before, I flew out to Austin to go to your concert with him, and then this past year as well, I flew out again, and he happened to get the VIP tickets with the acoustic experience, and it was incredible because it was just you singing and telling songs and asking questions, and it was a really intimate experience. So, yeah, I actually had an opportunity to ask you about something that I'm so excited to dive into deeper with you on this episode, which is that a lot of your music seems to have a lot of like deep philosophical insights and a deep awareness that I don't often see in a lot of other music, especially not one of like a feel good nostalgia kind of genre. Um, and so I had asked you this then, but I'd love to revisit this. Where did your quest for more, your quest for knowledge, your quest for understanding of the human existence, where did that get started?
If you asked me this on that day, I'm sure I will give you a very different answer than right now. I don't know. I've always been a curious kid. I remember being found out at a mandatory basketball pep rally in 10th grade. Everybody was supposed to be paying attention, and I was sitting behind the bleachers reading Sigmund Freud's The Interpretation of Dreams. And the assistant principal found me and just yelled at me for not having enough school spirit, and how dare I, not participate in that group activity. Um, I don't know. I was always just set on this course to be a perpetual seeker. Hopefully not forever. Hopefully I'll hit a point where I'm like, yeah, okay, I feel good. Let me just live in this room for a little while. But yeah, I don't know. I grew up in a very small town with a very kind of limited horizon, and I was just always the kid that asked too many questions, and at some point the adults stopped having pat answers for me, and so I started to seek answers elsewhere, and that was the beginning of the end, as it were.
I totally relate as a seeker myself. It's seems like everywhere you seek, then there's a new rabbit hole to go down.
Yeah, yeah.
And you had shared with me then that you also ended up getting your degree in philosophy. Is that correct?
That is correct. Gosh, I started off at a Wesleyan college in Kentucky called Asbury College, and I thought, okay, good, a religious college, that'll be fine. I was I guess, like an evangelical. My dad was a minister in the Methodist church, and I would go to the Baptist church in my little hometown because it had a good like choir program, and I thought, okay, good, this will be a good community to learn things in, but it was way too oppressive and way too restrictive. And I am grateful having left that experience after a year, with a desire to um, ask the deeper questions within a framework that was not the Bible. So I transferred from Asbury to Georgia State, and got a religious studies and philosophy major.
Wow. And what was your favorite sort of sect of philosophy that you got into? Who were some of your biggest influences?
It's so funny. I had this thought earlier today. I started writing songs and reading like letters to a young poet and The Gift by Lewis Hyde. I think Big Magic fit in there sometime early on. These creative self-help books, it seems like Rick Rubin has kind of captured the market on this, though I don't know if he really speaks to creatives. I think it's just a pretty coffee table book. But some of like Twyla Tharp and Julia Cameron, obviously, like this is like an important um, liturgy for creatives. But I think that philosophy is more helpful because philosophy, at least like continental philosophy, existentialism, the stuff that kind of sprang up just before and just after some major wars in Western Europe. Um, these philosophy asks, questions about mortality, which seem to inspire more crisis in my work than the creative self-help book. Creative self-help is sort of like, well, how do I approach the page today and do a little better, or just become a little more perfect each day? And philosophy goes, you're going to die and you're going to be dead forever, and you're alive once, and you get to decide what this life means, and you have to make it matter, and every play matters, and awaken to the crisis that is your life. Now create. And that seems like a more interesting place to approach a blank page from. So I went to a school. Georgia State was well known for its analytic philosophy, which is a little too mathy for me. But I liked Sartre and Hegel and Kierkegaard and all of the continental and the existentialists, and also Eastern philosophy. I've a lot of like the Tao Te Ching is pretty central in my education.
Interesting. I'm curious, is that still how you feel today? Like you get this one life and you have to make it count in all of your studies? Is that like what you're holding as your truth right now?
I'm very motivated by the myth of in Plato's Republic, Book 10. Plato argues about the ideal city for a long time, and then he finally says, do you want to know what heaven is like? And you know the myth of This seems pretty foundational for talking about consciousness and awareness and the soul. This soldier wakes up after having been dead for a week and talks about what the afterlife is like. And Pixar did a good job of imagining this story in, I think it was called Soul. But the universe incarnate, these not quite beings, not yet beings, choose their lots. Like at a lottery, they choose their lives before they are born, and they cross the river of forgetfulness, and they forget that they are the universe incarnate, and they wash up on a shore in a time and a place with DNA and a family and a backstory, and are then tasked with figuring the whole thing out and reconnecting that universe based on the people that they meet and the places that they go and the books they read and all of that. And then perhaps if we experience this right with enough interrogation and enough heart, we connect to our daimon, our daimonic spirit that speaks to the gods on our behalf and guides the whole thing. So my truth, I think, is a bit of a Hegelian metaphysics, that all life is yearning, reaching, slouching towards a kind of self-awareness, and that we are collectively this sort of embryonic God that is emerging slowly through the dialectical process of thesis and antithesis and synthesis. And I think that's my truth, is to be alive for a little while in the terror and bliss of becoming, and then we'll fade away, sublimate, and then perhaps we'll be recycled, sometime down the line. But no, I put myself out of the kind of Christian Protestant tradition a long time ago. It's a little more mystical, a little more interesting, and a little more terrifying as well.
I absolutely love that description. I think you did a wonderful job of succinctly sort of explaining and even bringing in something as simple as that Pixar movie, which did a wonderful job of exemplifying. There's a book called Journey of Souls that I've read, that's about a former therapist who becomes a hypnotherapist and starts hypnotizing clients for these past life regressions, and discovers
Cool.
exactly what you described, that they all have this kind of similar experience of where they go when they die, what happens, and then what happens when they're reborn. And we are just this one entity of God kind of re-experiencing itself. Like, you are God, I am God. We are now experiencing each other as whatever we want to call it, God, goddess, universe, source, spirit. Um, Learning then that remembering, like you said, of we forgot so that we can remember and we can become something ever so slightly different.
I'm curious what your truth, what your ground is, Barrett.
I think that we have had so many lives before this. I think there's also newer souls and there's also older souls. So I happen to have a pretty good awareness. I'm a pretty old soul. And I'm hoping kind of that this might be my last Earth experience. And I'll move on to other dimensions and different realms after this one. But I think that there's a lot that we come here with the purpose of that we chose before we came into these bodies, kind of like you referenced. And so, what are those lessons? What did we want to experience? And what was the impact we wanted to have on the world? Whether that's on a grand scale, like making music that influences people's lives and moods and changes people's lives, even for instance, or whether that's being the greatest mother to a family or being a firefighter like we're experiencing in California right now. The Palisades fire is going on where I know you've spent a lot of time living in LA, and I did as well, and happening just like 15 miles from where I'm at right now. And so, whether it's being a firefighter and putting out those fires that we're sending well wishes for, everyone came here with a purpose. And ultimately, my biggest belief is that our purpose is to remember that connection to all, the connection to love, the connection that makes us feel home, the connection that makes us feel oneness as the all.
Sounds right to me.
And so, when did you start writing music? How did music and philosophy sort of intertwine in your life?
Music started before philosophy, or maybe it started um, along with religion. My dad was the music minister, like I said, so a lot of my early music um, education came. It, a- I was learning guitar tabs on dial-up internet, so that was the beginning. But also playing these songs at the Southern Baptist Church on Wednesday night for the youth group. So those two things kind of came together, and then I was writing songs. 16, 17. Slacking off in the back of class in high school. So yeah,
And so, after high school, you got into country music, is that correct?
kind of. I would put it more in the folk music category, and I toured the U.S. for a while in my hatchback, and I called it the Sadness and Deprivation Tour. That lasted 10 years, and I played coffee shops all across the Midwest, and but it was just singer songwriter folk. I was trying to do my best Paul Simon impression, I think. It was only after Mumford and Sons had scored an unexpected hit that I was called a country artist and asked uh, to show up as a country artist in LA. 2 seconds, my wife's 10-year anniversary ring just arrived, and I have to get it.
Sounds very important to make sure
Yes,
it's received.
thank you. All right, guys.
While we're down here, don't you have like a library that I've seen on your stories where you actually have like some books on display? You have a lovely little library.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, this is my old house. We moved into it in 2019, just in time for the pandemic.
Oh,
And it's old and weird, and my son didn't have a bathroom on his level. And so we
mm,
built an internal staircase, and in the internal staircase we built a library. So
this is
this
library
is my
goals.
library. Yeah.
For anyone
It's
who's just listening to this podcast episode, he's got like a whole wall that's floor to ceiling of books with a few ones that are actually, there's a row that's just books more open and available to kind of walk up and look at.
and then this is the piece de la resistance, the nook, the reading nook. That's the just a little bench window. But yeah, here's
Beautiful.
the library. I'm very happy to have it. I've been dreaming about this space for a long time.
Gosh, I can imagine. I have a fantasy of creating one in my future home one day as well.
I'm move to a state that you know costs a little less in rent, and you can do anything.
Right? You too can have land and a three-bedroom home for under $2,000 a month, I'm sure.
That's right. All right, sorry about
Oh,
that.
oh, it's okay. So you were then considered a country singer, though you thought yourself to be folk. And at
Yeah,
what point did you begin then to venture into the synthwave genre? Like, was synthwave a thing when you ventured into it?
I didn't think that synthwave was a thing well into the midnight career. I didn't. I didn't know that that's what we were doing. Um, I was I got a publishing deal after about 6 months of living in LA. I was a singer songwriter in many different capacities, and I got signed to a publishing deal. So often I would write with the Nashville writers who came to Los Angeles, and we would write country songs. Um, but just as often I would be matched with the DJ producer, or usually not hip hop, but kind of like the alt rock rap thing. I did that. Um, and one day I was matched with a Danish house producer named Tim McEwen, who was going by I Am Data. I should add that was his like producer name for a while.
Okay.
He'll be mad if I let that out into the world, but that's okay. It's true. And we really had very little common ground. Um, I think James Taylor was the only artist that we like shared in our little Venn diagram. Like he was Pat Metheny and jazz and Phil Collins, and I was Bruce Springsteen and Paul Simon and Lucinda Williams. But James Taylor, that's where we started. And we wrote a cool house song called We Move Forward. And um, initially he just had an 8-bar loop, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna write this verse. And he left the room and he came back, and I was like, I wrote the verse, now make me a B part. And because he's an electronic based producer, he was like, no, just write the B part on the loop that I made you. I was like, I don't think you can do that. And he was like, you can, and you will, because I'm not making a B part. And and so that's how the midnight started, and it was just really fun. It pushed me just enough out of my comfort zone, and him just enough out of his comfort zone, that we found some kind of alignment that was outside of both of ourselves. And um, it became like a synthwave nostalgia, you know, party. And we didn't know that that's what we were doing initially, but we were given such strict parameters in the music industry in LA. We were both trying to make it, and so these are the rules with a track.
Mhm.
And at some point early on in the process, Tim just said, is it okay if we just break the rules and do this to please ourselves? And I said, sure. That was what I'd been doing mostly anyway. But that's where the saxophone came from, and that's where the like
Mm,
long meandering. You know, we have a song called Vampires. It does not have a line in it that says vampires. There's no chorus. It's just the saxophone solo. We break all the rules that we were supposed to adhere to, and that was the fun of the midnight early on. And now it is, you know, now it's a job, and now it's a career, and there are lots of people that depend on us to you know, for their income as well. So we're trying to do right by everyone. But it started as just Tim and I throwing things against the wall to see what would fit.
mm. And how has that shift felt going from, "Oh, this is something so fun where we get to break all the rules," to now there's a bit of pressure around getting it right enough that everyone's happy and making money?
Um, well, now that I don't read comments on Reddit, it's fine. No, it's allowed me to have my dream job. I've traveled around the world. My 6-year-old child has been to more countries in his 6 years than I went to my first 30. Am privileged to know, you know, fellow creators all over the world, and it is an absolute dream. and we love our fans, even the cranky ones. And yeah, and we'll see what the future holds. But I much prefer it to riding around Dubuque, Iowa, trying to find a place to crash after my set at the coffee shop. It's way better. I don't think I would still be able to be in music if that was still the level that I was creating.
Sure. I met some of your like super fans at the VIP experience, and they were absolutely delightful. Everyone has this affinity for the nostalgia of the music. How would you
Mhm.
describe synthwave as a genre for anyone listening who's like, what the heck is synthwave?
I think okay, so synthwave is using lots of the sounds, the DX7, the gated snare drum, the Linn drums, the Jupiter, the Juno, a lot of these sounds that were on the Kmart playlist in like the late 80s um, had kind of disappeared for a generation or two. They were just so oversaturated. Like synthesis was in its uh, embryonic stage in the 70s and 80s, and it kind of had a season, and then it stopped, and then you got the 90s, which was you know pop rock with dry drums and a lot
Mm.
of folk rock acoustic guitars, and then Nirvana, and then the synthesizer was kind of gone. um, but Apple and GarageBand put a lot of these stock sounds into their free software, so that if you're just learning how to produce things, oh, there's a an SM synthesizer built in. This sounds kind of like Depeche Mode from the 80s. And so I think synthwave kind of found its renaissance as this generation's garage band. Like I mean, like when you used to grab an instrument to go to your friend's parents' garage and like play music, and a band would start in like here. Um, Now I think it's individuals in their bedrooms using the software, using Logic, and which is a music recording software, and having instant access to these very delicate old pieces of electronic music. Um, yeah, so I think that's the appeal of it. I think it came from this era in the mid aughts called Bloghouse. I think it came from Dance World. So a lot of indie rock was being chopped up by producers like Kavinsky or even The Weeknd. And indie rock was being recontextualized into indie dance music, Bloghouse, breakbeat. Um, and this is obviously where Daft Punk and Justice came from as well. And then Daft Punk ended, and I think that that spirit was somehow mixed with the loner spirit of like 80s soundtrack music, like John Carpenter and this sort of thing. So somewhere in the early like 2012 to 2014, FM Attack was doing it, Betamax was doing it, Time Cop, Future Cop. There were a few people that were making this kind of music in its early kind of stage, but I think that's where it came from, and where it's headed, we will see. But yeah, it's a desire to return to this sense of origin. I think it's a subconscious drive to return to that Kmart to hear those synthesizers played in a certain kind of way. It's like the cave wall of the subconscious, child search for origins or something like that. There's something comforting about going back into that kind of pre-conscious world. But it also comes to the downside, because you can't go back. So it's the retro thing is a double-edged sword, I think, and it's always important to kind of push the conversation forward and not backwards.
Hmm. Very interesting. Yeah, because it already brings that piece from the past into it. And so, how do you continue to evolve that synthwave genre? Which I love how you guys brought in the saxophone, which just brings back all of these memories of like sexy sax in what was that, late 80s, early 90s movies where they would just play the saxophone randomly. Someone would be playing in a movie, and it
Yes.
comes through, and it's so nostalgic the way it hits with those. synths in the background.
Right. It's like they had a dial. They just wanted to dial up the saxophone sexiness. That was just the one tool that they had. They were like, we got to make it cooler. Um, yes, but the desire to return is an interesting one. You don't want people to get trapped in a fantasy land, and I
Mm,
think that what's been fun about the Midnight is that Tim is the producer. He creates the sonic atmosphere, and I'm just writing folk songs. I'm trying to connect in a genuine kind of just heart to heart kind of way,
mhm.
and how that shakes out is some people are very upset with how sentimental it is, and some people are upset that it's too rock and roll or it's too self conscious or something. I don't
Yeah.
know, but yeah, yeah,
How do
that's what
you
Synthwave
please
is.
everyone? Something I did receive a couple questions from my friend who's a super fan. So
Cool.
one of the things he was interested in, he recalled seeing that you had a new album that you guys have worked on, and
Hmm.
he saw in a story that you mentioned it didn't go over well, so it's gone back to the recording studio to work on. What is the status of the album? What was the feedback like that kind of sent it back to be reworked on?
Well, uh, I should have clarified in my story from the other day. Um, the feedback came from Tim and I. We did sit with a room of record executive people from Sony Ultra. We just signed to their label a few months ago and are very excited about that partnership. They said only nice things about the new record. It was Tim and I that kind of looked at each other and felt this is not finished. It's not fleshed out. This is um, we set out to make a Eurodance early '90s kind of follow up to Nocturnal, and I feel like
Mm,
we did that. We did it. All of the bells and whistles were there, um, but it didn't feel right. And so um, this is really the first time in our career that we've been able to hit the pause button and reassess. And that's what we did. We had 13 to 15 songs. And then this was last March that we opened the folder back up, and we've written another 35 or so kind of
wow.
demos. I know it becomes kind of a difficult creative question of how to frame the next record, and it's one that we're in all transparency we're trying to figure out, because the fan experience is the most important thing for us. I can write confessional songs all day long. It's I've got my dream job and all that, but if we don't please our core fans with this thing, then it makes it less possible in the future. So we just want to get it right, whatever that mixture is. And it's possible we're overthinking it and dragging our feet and all that, but usually with a record we've had, it's a 12-song record, we had 12 to 13 songs. We
Mm,
just put out whatever we had. um, and and we're getting to a point with this band that it really, um, I want to crack some codes, some songwriting codes, and for Tim to make the world just elevate a little more, get an extra dimension of life into it, because we feel like that's what the fans have given us, is kind of the pressure to do better. So that's what we're trying to do. But yeah, there's,
mm.
gosh, I think something like 40 demos out there that are waiting to be dialed in.
Wow. So fun fact, something my listeners don't know is I once had a small career as a singer when I was around like 13, 14 years, like that pop genre era, 14 to
Mhm.
15. But I can't imagine having had so many songs to try and consult, like choose from the album. And then where do all of those other hidden gems go into the archives, or do they get released as individual, like individual tracks?
Things are rarely wasted. And if they are, it means they probably weren't that good. So yeah, I think things live on. But yeah, that's the status of the record right now.
Mm. So I'm curious, one thing that is a big throughway on my show and in my life is psychedelic medicines and utilizing those for both creativity, for healing, for consciousness expansion. I'm curious, what is your experience with psychedelics? Have you done them?
I have. Um, I suppose I should have thought about this answer a little more. I when I was in California, I got my weed card when it was still like a medical kind of situation. I
Mhm.
remember having had 2 drinks on Washington Boulevard, and I was walking up Venice Beach boardwalk, and the doctor was like, "I'm about to close. I'll give you half off for your medical card." And I was like, "Okay, great." And having been a kid from the deep South with a religious background, I really didn't have any experience in drugs. Weed's not a drug. It's, you know, it's weed's weed. But I remember like being so proud because it was a medical card. But not
Mhm.
everybody could get weed. This is like 2011, I think. And I remember a friend asking me to grab some marijuana for a party. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna get the drugs for the party. And I bought the weed for the party, and I bought a candy bar. And I was like, why is this candy bar $70? And and I before the party, I ate it was like sectioned into like six. And I was like, okay, I'll take one of the sixths. And I waited like 20 minutes, and I was like, I don't feel anything at all. So I ate the rest of the candy bar and went to the party. And I think the last words that I said were, everything is geometry, before I passed out on my friend Zach's couch for 14 hours.
Wow.
And the next thing I remember was him asking me to leave at like 2 p.m. the next day. So
Wow.
that was weed. I thought, well, this is not, no, I did that wrong. Um, uh, Mushrooms were a bit different. I have a friend, and I do have to say, this is kind of the point in life where my former evangelical friends are hitting their midlife crises, and they're reaching out to me because they know I'm not in the church anymore, and I'm like a safe person to talk to about psychedelics. Um, but one of these people is, I won't say too much about him because his employment depends on it. But he's a worship leader at a major church in the South, and he has had some health struggles, some pretty serious ones, um, that have put him in contact with life and death, and that's been a sustained story for him. So psychedelics were a way for him to, I don't know, be in touch with that place, that living between life and death. And he keeps it as a secret because his spiritual community is not accepting of it. But I went to his house, and I went on a hero's journey,
Wow.
and uh, it was it was bizarre. It was the week before lockdown of COVID, and I just kept having these visions of being digested in God's lower intestine, and hummus and dirt and fertilizer and all of these weird. And he'd had colon cancer, and I was like, I get the joke, God, I understand. And I just, uh, but it was not a positive enough experience. I've gone back to it in small doses, and I've had some good experiences with listening to like deep listening, like a John Hopkins or something. Some composers like this. Daniel Avery is a good one, but I've not taken a dose high enough to put me back in touch with the the fertilizer god visions. Uh,
Every dose is
so
different.
yeah. So, I have, I was just talking to a friend that psychedelics have changed his life and set him on a course. I have always been spiritually minded, and I've always had meditation as part of my practice. And got 10 years worth of daily pages over here. And I feel like I'm in good contact um, with that other realm. Part of what makes me a better songwriter is what makes me um, a little more standoffish or a little more of a hermit, uh, in relation to the world. But after lockdown of COVID, and having had kind of a neutral to bad trip, I have not seriously gone back down that road since then. I have in small doses, and it's been fine. But
Hmm.
that's that's my unexciting kind of downer of an answer is, yeah.
Not a downer of an answer at all. What I'm hearing is you've dabbled and you had an experience that was not what you thought it would be, and certainly a different experience than you were hoping for. But it sounds like you still learned some important things out of that challenging experience, and especially, they're not for everybody.
Yeah.
And when people are actually very deeply in touch, they don't seek the medicine, or the medicine's not illuminating something for them that they didn't feel they already had a good handle on, like you, for example.
I feel like I have a good enough not that I'm well attuned or anything, I'm not aligned or anything, but there are enough clearing mechanisms in my daily practice. I go to therapy. I have, like healthy check-ins with friends. I have my healthy check-ins with myself. These are just kind of a clearing part. And it's maybe true that any kind of deep wisdom would probably surprise me at this point. I
Mm.
feel like I'm tuned in, maybe not exactly on the right frequency, but pretty close.
Tuned in on whatever frequency is meant for you to remember in this lifetime, it sounds
Maybe.
like. But
Yeah.
wonderful that you're surrounded by other beautiful experiences and people reaching out about it. And I'd have to say that's one of the things that makes my heart so heavy is the strictness of so many religious practices nowadays. I grew up a little bit Catholic and kind of convinced my parents to stop going to church
Okay.
ultimately, before I got into more sort of pagan practices, which made sense to me because it was this deep connection really with the earth and with nature.
Yep.
I don't consider myself religious at this point. However, in the last year, I've really developed much more of knowledge around Jesus Christ,
Mhm.
um, and exactly what his teachings were. I don't know if you watch The Chosen, which I think is it's one of the most incredible television shows ever made. The largest crowdfunded show of all time that they made about the rising of Jesus and his disciples. I
Okay.
think you can watch the first season on Netflix, and then it's like on their own app. But it's incredible. It's like HBO worthy. You'll laugh, you'll cry. The characters are incredibly compelling. And it's really illuminated actually what Jesus was about, and sharing the message of love and compassion, and how he worked as a healer, one of the most incredible healers of all time. And so I've come a bit more in touch with essentially the mythology of Jesus, and invited him to kind of mentor me now as I do shamanic work and medicine work as well. And so having that strength of just a mentor who kind of taps in and reminds me like, hey, more compassion here, or here's how to ground some more of that healing energy. And um, yeah, I sort of feel like I'm 38 years old now, and I'm having this renaissance with Jesus that I think is what's missing a lot in the strictness of the religion around him that is failing modern society.
I certainly
Yes.
experienced a lot of the failing. Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Do you have any sort of religious associations or beliefs now?
Um, I am a fair weather Unitarian.
Good.
Um, I yeah, there's just so much after my religious studies degree. I just kind of realized that all the people that taught me scripture didn't actually know what scripture was. And the Wittgenstein quote, "When you know too much, it's hard not to lie." Um, and so I just left. I was leading worship at the time and had this moment on stage where I thought, this is idolatry. I'm leading people in the wrong direction, and I don't believe this anymore myself. And I moved to Paris and found art and beauty and a secular society that was functioning better than my sin black, hell hot, red blooded American uh, like rural upbringing. So I thought, well, I'll be something else. Actually, the day that it was, I was going home from my job in Paris, and I was on the metro, and I saw like this Indian woman begging for change, and I saw rabbis, and I saw priests, and I saw like there were 4 or 5 different religious figures in this one metro train car, and I had this thought: it's a shame that all these people are going to hell. And then I thought, wait, these people aren't going to hell. Like, what a strange thought. How all of these people have their own very considered conceptions of God, and all of their very considered conceptions of God, including mine, preclude all of these other people's stories of who that God is. How can I be so so smug to think that my like little slice of this story is true with a capital T. And so from that moment on, I kind of was like, I don't have a worldview. I'm going to start with the ground and I'm going to record what I see. And after a good decade of that, a lot of it feels good to love your neighbor. It feels good to have a spiritual practice where you feel in tune with yourself and something higher than you, and where there's purpose. A lot of this stuff withstands life after a worldview. So I do believe that spiritual community is important, but COVID has made it convenient for me not to have really set uh, those anchors in my family's story yet. But I like the Unitarians because they don't put too fine a point on anything, and you don't even have to believe in God to go. So I like that Sunday hour. Other Sunday hours at other Christian religious traditions, I still have arguments in the back of my head. So the answer is no. I'm agnostic, optimistic, fair weather Unitarian.
Mm, I love that description. It's like just believing in the all, believing in everything is one. It's a pretty solid belief structure, and then how you treat everyone else.
It's hard to like proselytize that and like get a suicide bomber though, it's like, it's not a religious belief that's like hard enough to be like, yes, this belief deserves my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair weather. That's where I am.
So something else I saw through your stories recently is that you were reaching out and asking for Indian producers to get a hold of you. And then it seems like you are now planning to go to India to work with some of them or do some recording. What is that about? What are you going to do?
Well, I should start off by saying I wrote a song called Pondicherry when I was living in New York and was researching alternative lifestyle communities. And so in Oroville in India, there's this, I say hippie commune. I've never been there, but it's like it's a very progressive, very sort of enlightened community. And then my band went to India in 2024, and it was a life-changing thing. The to say the culture too broad, the music, the food, the people, the intensity of the sort of embrace of attention. People see you in a different way, and want to embrace you and engulf you, and there's just this it is the land of the heart in a way that I've not experienced. And so I just the day that I made that video, I was walking by myself and I thought, I want to go to India this year, and I don't want to wait again for another 5 years for my band to go. So I made the video, and there were 4 or 5 different people that reached back out, and so I have been working on a song with an actress, singer, songwriter from Pondicherry, and actually just had a co-write from a guy who lives in Atlanta but is flying to Bangalore next week, whose family is from there, and he's going to Pondicherry, and it's anyway. I really I don't know what the end of the story of India looks like, but it was just one of these upwelling thoughts in my stupid brain, and I thought, okay, let's just speak this into existence. And there's this. Let me see if I have it here. I don't think I do. The the Fisher King and the Grail King. This mythology. Joseph Campbell writes about it. Martin Shaw
Mm.
writes about it in a book called the Snowy Tower. But Parzival, the young knight, he is sitting at the king's table, and all he has to do is ask the question that is in his heart. And the question is, whom does the Grail King serve? And that question alone sets the whole kingdom free, and it cures the Grail King of his mortal wound that he's carried since childhood, and it rights the whole kingdom. But because his mother had raised him to be very polite, he ignored the question when it came up from his gut, and he thought, no, I'll just embarrass myself if I make too much attention and ask this non sequitur of a question. And so when Parzival wakes up in the castle the next morning, all of the magic has disappeared. It's desolate. There's no one around, and he goes out for 20 more years, having thought that he'd failed God, until he kind of earned by his actions the ability to return and then ask the question and put the kingdom to right. And I take that as a very potent illustration of why you should just speak whatever crazy thing comes, because we, somebody said this, not me, but the chief admission of the uh, self is that the soul is not its final authority. There are bigger forces at play, and especially thinking about this myth of that we serve this vision that our life is not just our life, that it is a part of life itself, which is much bigger. So yes, Joseph Campbell calls it the left-hand path, but really it's just naming and claiming whatever that weird thing that wells up is. So that's all that was, and I hope that I get to go to India this spring and work with all these amazing producers that I'm messaging on Instagram right now.
It sounds like the absolute following of the synchronicities that popped up into your life. Like you mentioned, you thought about it, and we were working with someone who's from that place, and someone else is going to that place. It's like the universe being like, how many more hits of this do you need before you follow the breadcrumbs?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And I
Yes.
love that, true, that expression of our own authenticity. Authenticity is the highest frequency we can vibrate at, even higher than love, higher than gratitude. It is owning all of those parts of ourselves that others can sense when we're being truly and fully authentic. And so
Yes.
walking that and holding that keeps you aligned on your path.
That's right. That's right. And I should also say that in this career, there's no other company that I could move to if this one fails to keep my current job. I can't go to VP of sales at some other company. And there is this tendency, and this also might be social media, but for us to think that like I have to catch up, or I have to do better, or I have to like really hustle to struggle to make the next thing count. Um, and The wins always come when you just sort of abide and show up, and in an aligned place where your brain is not too far ahead of your heart, and you're just kind of there. And that that moment of encounter in the daily, just walking the path, that is where kind of the yellow brick road unfolds. And it's not elsewhere. It's always here, and it always arrives right on time, and everything just demands that you kind of pay attention and be open, and try and enjoy this process. So I don't know. I'm always just smacked on the head by life to come back to the center. But uh, yes, we are held by forces much larger than ourselves. I believe that.
Mm. So, one final question I have for you today is, if there was one message that you could scream from the mountaintops, put on billboards all over the world, one thing that you wanted the world to think about, what would that be?
So I think that there are four worlds that we live in. Um, and this is shamanic, this is historical, this is so it's the head, the mental, the attentional, um, it is the emotional, the pathos, it is the physical, and it is the spiritual. And I think um, that a lot of our trouble comes from assigning answers from realms that compete. And Blaise Pascal calls tyranny the desire to claim mastery in a world that you have not earned. So I am rich, so I should teach your children. So I am a celebrity, therefore I should run your country. These are worlds that don't have relationship with each other. Um, and I think it's important to kind of to say stay in your lane. It is almost a combative thing, but to like let that kind of sink in, to like know what your story is and to know what your story is not. And in which of those four realms your story lives, and to follow it in that story. I think we would simplify a lot, and we would turn off um, all of the screens in our lives, because this here now presently, this is the story. And to not get caught in the wrong story, certainly told by somebody other than yourself.
Absolutely. And I would expand on that to add that you can also grow in all of those arenas. continuously
Yes.
throughout life. But what a beautiful message to share with the world.
Thanks for this. This is fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. For my listeners, where can they keep up with you? Where are you most active on social media?
Uh, yeah, yeah. It's Instagram or tylerlyle.com, but I'm around Tyler Lyle or the midnight official.com.
Perfect. Well, we'll have both of those linked up in the show notes. And I'm so excited to see where your India journey takes you and to hear the new album when it's ready. And so thank you for all of your gifts that you're sharing with the world, from your creative talents to your philosophical discoveries to the work you've done on yourself. Thank you for being a radiant light in this world.
And you, Barrett. Thank you.
Thank you.